Think back to when you were a child. Did you have a dream of what you wanted to be when you grew up? At the age of 11, my guest for this episode, Steve Gamlin, had a very clear picture of what he wanted to be. And it wasn't typical. First was a radio DJ. Second was a stand-up comedian. Third was the author of his own books. And fourth, the teacher of people. Now, over the years, he manifested all of these things through intention and effort. But along the way, he experienced a lot of highs and a lot of lows. Today, he's the creator of the program Vision Board Mastery and co-founder of a nonprofit called Beach Bum Philanthropy. Steve works with frustrated entrepreneurs to help them stop hustling and grinding and find true purpose in their lives. He believes intentional action and understanding the emotional connection to your goals are the key combo for making them a reality. So strap in and get ready to level up your ability to overcome challenges, find ways to integrate what you love into your life, and transform your results by making simple shifts in your self-talk. Let's go to the interview.
Hello, and welcome to Hero Up, the podcast that inspires and challenges you to step up and become heroic in all areas of your life. I'm your host, Tony Stark Polici, and it's my goal to give you practical, actionable advice and insights into copywriting, mindset, lifestyle, and impact. On this show, we'll explore how to create compelling and persuasive marketing messages, and I'll give you clever tips to make you stand out as a hero. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a freelancer, a coach, or a creative, this podcast is for you. So, let's dive in. All right, everyone, you just heard the intro to my amazing guest today, Steve Gamlin. Thank you so much for being here on the Hero Up Show. I am delighted to talk with you today.
Truly honored. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, so, the first thing I want to ask you, Steve, is you've got a lot of things in your resume, your life experience, but how would you describe yourself now? Who are you and what do you do?
I enjoy life as a keynote speaker, a visualization coach, creator of a program called Vision Board Mastery, and co-founder of a little nonprofit here in New England called Beach Bum Philanthropy. And I live my day doing my best to leave plus signs trailing behind me wherever I go. And that's my favorite occupation I think I've ever had.
Yeah. So what do you do for the people that you work with? What kind of, how do you bring the value to their lives? When you say plus signs, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I love that.
Leaving as many situations as I can better than I find them, even in the simplest ways. Reaching out to somebody to wish them a good day, holding a door for somebody. When it comes to my clients, if I happen to see them on social media looking like they're struggling a little bit, I'll just happen to reach out and make them laugh, send some good positive energy their way. If they're talking about a goal or a struggle, we'll hop on a quick call and just help them to visualize a better outcome and then plot out some better actions to get there. Because with everything going on in the world, some people are not reacting and responding in very positive ways, and they don't realize how badly it impacts their days. So I'm that guy who gives little kicks and nudges and tickles to just kind of get them back on a positive track.
Well, I know that mindset and visualization are really important to you, really important parts of your life, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I'd like to go back, to like maybe when you were a kid. So tell me, you've had some really interesting things, some visions early on as a young boy. Tell me some of this, what your aspirations were when you were a kid.
Yeah, when I was 11 years old, I was in the 5th grade, and this was in the late 70s. I wanted to be a radio DJ because at the time there was a TV show called WKRP in Cincinnati, and there was the coolest DJ in the world named Dr. Johnny Fever. I wanted to do what he did. I also wanted to be a stand-up comedian because Steve Martin was huge at the time and got paid to make people laugh, and I wanted to do that. I wanted to be an author of my own books because my mom instilled a love of reading and writing in myself and my sister. And I wanted to be a teacher of people, but not in a classroom. I wanted to be just a teacher of human beings because I had an incredible 5th grade teacher named Mrs. Farron, who whenever I finished my work early, she would encourage me to mentor and help out some of the other students that may have been struggling with the lesson. So in essence, she had me coaching at age 11 before I knew what that was. And as far as the other stuff, that was my vision I used to have a little tape recorder of my dad's, and I used to make my own radio shows using my record player and my cassette decks and the microphone. And I used to write comedy bits and song parodies, and I used to write my own little books and stories when I was 11 years old. Didn't know it was called visualization at the time, but I was making it real before it became real. And at age 56, I have done all of those things and still enjoy speaking and writing.
Yeah, so, that's really fascinating. I think that nowadays it is more widely accepted that there is this tremendous power in what we think about and the visualizations and things that we do. I remember, I don't know what book it was that I read, but sometime back in the early 2000s, maybe late 1990s, I wrote a list of 100 goals for myself. And I posted it on the wall for a while, and then I took it down and moved my office, changed things around. About 8 years later, and a couple of computers later, I went through this hard drive, and I was like, oh, there's that list. I opened it up. Like 50 something of them were completed. And I was like, holy cow, I forgot that these were even goals, right?
Yep.
And that just illustrated me the power of setting this intention, what our subconscious actually can go to work on, what we set our intention on. Yep. There's been a lot of things. I mean, The Secret was a big hit a few years ago. And, you have an interesting perspective about that because you say you manifested these things in your life, but it wasn't some like woo-woo thing.
Yeah.
It was through hard work and intentional, effort. So tell me a little bit about your feelings about The Secret and that sort of approach versus what's worked for you.
Yeah, I love, and I'll preface it by saying I love The Secret. I bought the DVD when it first came out because at the time my life was in a really low place. And I love a lot of what they said and how they explained it. But, and it's a big but, a little too much on the woo-woo as far as their approach to it. In the DVD version of The Secret, which is the version that I own, there was a genie in a magic lamp. And the genie's only line throughout the DVD was, "Your wish is my command." So to me, it painted a picture that said you can just wish for it and it'll happen. I just believe you've got to do a lot more work. You have to be, like you said, very intentional with what you want. You have to be very clear about what you want. The way that I teach things, I have people tell me a story about what you want and attach all your senses. What do your goals look like, feel like, sound like, smell like, taste like? Create the full-on experiential version of the outcome of that goal, not just what you want to get, but who you want to become. And for me, that's where The Secret fell short. There wasn't enough intentional action. And I don't believe also there was enough of an emotionally connected why to what you want. And when you have that, you can keep a little pebble from becoming a Jersey barrier, which happens to so many people when they're vague on their goals. So those were the areas. As much as I love The Secret, I think they could have done a little better by being more intentional, taking action, and understanding your why.
I look back and I think that one of the earliest widely adopted resources was Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Where, we talk about the power of the mastermind and visualization and things like this. Now, decades forward, even of The Secret, one of the gentlemen that I've listened to a number of times, which I find very fascinating, is I think it's Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yes.
And, he seems to incorporate everything that you just said, with making it very emotionally sensory rich, where you touch it, you smell it, you taste it, you feel it, you think about it. And it's like we're advancing in our understanding of how beliefs impact actions and results. And that's super powerful. I almost wish I could go back to 20-year-old Tony and teach him those things so that, there would be some different outcomes in my life. But it's wonderful to know that those things exist because I have kids and now I'm doing my best to educate them about this stuff so that they reap the benefits of it. Mm. Obviously, you've had a lot of success in your life, right? Mm-hmm. And you had these visions and these goals and you made them happen, but it couldn't have all been roses. So, let's go back. Tell me about some of the tough times. Like, where were there breakdowns? Where were there real challenges in your life?
One of the earliest ones was right after I graduated college. I was a business major. I graduated because I didn't really want to be there and didn't want to do anything with that degree. With this, what my dad used to call, I graduated summa cum this close because I graduated by 62 1,000ths of a point. I literally had to call the school the day before and ask if I should just even show up. And I did. I graduated, but my heart wasn't in it and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And a good friend of mine asked me one day, why didn't you ever follow your dream of being on the radio? You're happy when you talk about music. You've been saying it, at that time I was, more than 12 years talking about it. We'd been friends. And I don't know what to do or how to do it. Well, I called the local radio station and talked to a DJ and said I was interested. And she pointed out the name of a school down near Boston. So I borrowed $4,000 from my grandfather, whose couch I was living on, broken, depressed. Went to broadcast school at the end of the summer. This is 1992. Got an internship, not even a paid gig, an internship for nothing at a rock station we grew up listening to. And I drove to my friend's house. And he was so happy and he was so proud. And of course, I got the I told you so speech. And 3 weeks later, he passed away. And I didn't get the lesson of it until 10 years later, my radio career, very successful in radio. For every couple of years, the station would get sold, we'd all get fired. And in my third group in 10 years, I was burned out, exhausted, frustrated, just falling apart. And I quit. And I walked away without a full-time job. Just had a weekend DJ business that maybe made $11,000 a year at the time. And that led to the next low point. And on August of 2003, I had $3 left in my pocket on a hot and humid Friday afternoon here in New Hampshire. And I decided to take out my frustrations on a bucket of golf balls. Now, I'm a horrible golfer. So I went to the farthest tee box on the property, right against the fence that keeps you from denting the cars in the parking lot. And I was underneath.
That's my spot. That's my spot.
They should put a plaque there with both our names on it. And I was underneath these steel-towered series of power lines I was right under them. And a thunderstorm came through and everybody else except for me ran from the storm. And I was just so down and just so mad at myself for everything I'd done to wreck my life. I stayed there and just whacked the crap out of a big bucket of golf balls. And an hour later, I'd hit all of mine and the buckets of two other gentlemen who ran from the storm and never came back. And when I got to my car, opened the door, the rain stopped and the sun came out. And I just started laughing and looked up and said, all right, well played. And the next day, a life coach that I just started working with asked, how was your week? And I told him the story of that hour. As pathetic but funny as I could make it sound. And when he stopped laughing, he asked, have you ever thought of being a motivational speaker or a stand-up comedian? I think you'd be great at both. He didn't know what my goals were when I was 11 years old. And those were the two I hadn't done because my first book was about to come out at the time. That was the last two puzzle pieces. And within 2 weeks, I was at my first intro to comedy class. And a week later, my first Toastmasters meeting. Did stand up for 7 years. And this summer is 20 years since my first paid event as a speaker.
That's amazing. So what did hitting the golf balls in that storm, like what happened to you in that moment? Like what did that represent for you?
The lowest of the low. And at one point, I actually even stopped and held the club up in the air and looked up and I said, go ahead, I dare you. Because I just didn't want to be. I was just sick and tired and mad at myself. I was not mad at God. Some people say you shouldn't be mad at God or yell at God. I'm like, I wasn't yelling at him. I was giving him permission if he felt like it to wipe me out.
Yeah.
And It was kind of like the crow's nest scene in Forrest Gump with Lieutenant Dan in the hurricane screaming at the storm, is this all you got? Go ahead, blow. You'll never sink me. And that's what it felt like. It was very cathartic because I was just laughing at myself. And when it stopped raining, I laughed. And I look back at it now. I still have that golf club. And every time I see it, I just laugh and I look up and I go, got it. Thank you. Thanks for not wiping me out. Thank you for giving me the greatest life, which still has regular and periodic ups and downs. But I'm like the Wile E. Coyote of motivational speakers. That which doesn't kill me gives me a great story to share on stage. So I'm very rich in experiences.
Yeah. I love that. When I was listening to you tell that story, it took me back to something that happened to me. I remember I had an addiction issue right years ago. And I was sitting in one of these support group meetings one night. It was outside and everything just sucked. Everything was terrible in my life. I was so down. It was horrible, and from where I was sitting, I could look up and I could see the moon, and there was an air conditioning unit on the roof of the building, and the moon was over to the left of it. And, by the end of the meeting, the moon was on the other side of the air conditioning unit. And it just dawned on me, the world keeps turning, right? Like all of my little problems and my complaints and my worries, like life keeps going, life keeps turning. And it was a pivotal moment for me. First of all, understanding the devastating effects of self-pity. Second of all, taking ownership for the fact that, my life is my responsibility and good and bad things are going to come into it. What do I generate, right? But first and foremost is that this is just a snapshot in time, right? Whenever something terrible is going on, it's going to pass. Whenever something great is going on, it's going to pass. The world keeps turning. My heart keeps beating. Thank God. Let's use the minutes and the hours and the days that we have. So if I'm hearing this correctly, it sounds like there was some of that going on with the golf ball in the rain incident.
Oh, yeah.
Almost like, with the exception of, me daring God. No, I've had those moments too,
Yep.
right? Like, what else do you want me to do?
Yep.
Just kill me now.
Yep.
And grateful that didn't happen, allowing me to learn things.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found out about you is you absolutely love to inspire and serve other people. So tell me a little bit about that. Where did that come from?
It goes back to when my sister and I were kids. Our mom, one day, she just came out and said, someday I want to buy an old building and I want to move a bunch of homeless veterans into it and let them live there for free. And they can help fix up the building. They can grow a garden. They can have some, if they have addiction issues, they can have some counseling. They can have job training. They can have, some faith services there as well. And she just kind of put that in our heads when we were kids that would be a great project someday. Well, it never came to pass. But about 12 years ago, my mom reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you remember what I talked about when, you kids were small about buying a house and homeless veterans?" I said, "Yeah, I remember." She said, "There's a place in Manchester, New Hampshire, which is at this location was only a mile from the house we grew up in." She said, "They're doing it. We should reach out and see if they need any help or anything like that. Maybe make a donation."
Wow.
And a week later, my mom and I both at the time were volunteers at a Meals on Wheels program. And every day we'd bag up bread and lunches and all this and that. Well, they would always be throwing away the crusts of the bread. And there was a bag of them one day. And I thought, maybe I'll just make some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and bring them to this place. And maybe if somebody comes in off the street. And I made the messiest, most disgusting PB&J sandwiches on the dashboard of my Honda CR-V. Made a heck of a mess. It was like a hurricane came through a picnic area. It was gross.
Oh my gosh.
They were the sloppiest sandwiches you've ever seen, but I brought them in and they could not have been more gracious about it. And they gave them to guys that came in off the street that day. And a week later, we reached out and asked, "What else do you need?" And we recently celebrated 12 years. I was just there a couple days ago with some fresh baked pear bread, which is their favorite and their number one request, and about 6 bags of groceries. So that little seed my mom planted 12 years ago became a full-on, let's all each commit one daily act of kindness, which 3 years ago became an official 501c3. So now we're a legit registered organization committing acts of kindness by helping other people who are committing acts of kindness.
That's great. So your mom planted the seed as a kid. It took a long time for it to germinate and sprout, and then it finally came to fruition, and now you're going full bore. That's fantastic.
Yeah. We've always been kind as a family doing stuff, but it was never organized. It was never a mission until those 12 years ago when my mom pointed out that there was a place that was actually doing what she'd wanted to do. And we just jumped in, all of us, and started to do stuff. And some of my favorite memories are the simplest, free acts of kindness. And the most memorable are the ones when I was having a bad day and I just went into town and held the door for somebody or made someone laugh or played shopping cart rodeo, which is either rescuing one that's been left, or if you see someone putting the last bag in their car, say, "Excuse me, would you like me to return that carriage for you?" And I always look up and go, yeah, I saw that. I know. You put them there for me. They were the angel, not me.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I do that sort of stuff too. And I don't know why. I don't know where it comes from, but I do those sort of things as well. Steve, as a visualization coach, right? Have you worked with people that have frustrations about where they're at in life? Like, I should be further along than I am. I've had this dream ever since I was a kid and I can't make it happen. What has your experience been with working with people like that? Do you encounter those kinds of things? And how do you guide them and coach them when it comes to those sort of attitudes and experiences?
All the time. That's one of the things that I hear most. People, especially since the pandemic. The pandemic was a good shake-up and a good wake-up for a lot of people. People are saying, when I was a kid, my parents said, get a good education and a good job with a good company with good benefits, put your head down for 45 years and retire and enjoy your golden years. And when the pandemic happened, I talked to a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s who said, My life has no meaning. I have no purpose. This is not where I want it to be. This is not what I wanted to be doing. I'm not hanging with the people that I wanted to be around. What happened to all my dreams? So those are some of the first things I hear from people. And then we'll have a conversation. I said, well, what did you want to be when you were a kid? I'll go back all the way to there. Now, I'm not a licensed therapist or counselor or anything. This is everything I do is because I've gone through it, and that's how I teach and what I teach. Or just start to have conversations with them. And I love doing it on Zoom because I like to watch their faces as they're sharing stuff. And I'll tell them after, I said, you just tapped into something. I saw your face light up. So let's explore that. What about that is appealing to you? What would that look like, feel like, sound like, smell like, taste like? What's the little seed, and how can we just nudge you into that direction? And a lot of times people got their dreams steamrolled by people around them. Why do you want to do that? Or people that want to be successful. Oh, you think you're better than us now? That causes people to play small. And I know that firsthand. So those are a lot of the initial conversations I have. And matter of fact, I just thought of one person I worked with early on, one of the very first people I coached. She was working 60 hours a week as an accountant, and she wanted to chuck it all and go work at a nonprofit with children with disabilities. That's where her heart was. But when she added up all her bills and the amount of money she was making at the time in her responsibilities, she couldn't just jump and make that transition. So I suggested, why don't you look up and find a nonprofit in your community that's already doing that work and reach out and ask if they need any volunteers. And then for one Saturday a month, even just for an hour or two, just go volunteer for that one event and see how you feel. And within 3 weeks, she spent a Saturday morning bowling for 2 or 3 hours with a whole group of kids, and she got to have a ball with them. And she did not mind working 60 hours a week after that. So I told her, what you're working for is the slivers. If you can tolerate all of this just to be able to do this for that little bit of time and make it part of your life, you're probably on a better path than you actually believe. And she is still an accountant, and she is still a volunteer all these years later. And we're talking close to 20 years. She was one of the first conversations I ever had when I got on my path.
Well, that's great. That's a really beautiful perspective there as I'm thinking about it, because I've had this tendency in my life to be kind of an all or nothing guy, right? Struggling with grandiosity, like, oh, if I can't do it completely, then what's the point? And working for the slivers. I love that.
Yeah.
I've learned that if I can get a little bit of something that really, lights me up. So I really relate to that. I'm tired of doing this thing over here. I don't want to do this anymore because I want to do this. But this is what's paying the bills, right? I felt that way an awful lot about my copywriting and my marketing consulting because I've been doing this for 30 years. And sometimes I'm just like, I'm sick of like hitting the keys. I want to go do my men's work. I want to go work with men. I want to go do this theology stuff, these things that, light me up. But I have slivers. I've never used that term, but I love it. Where, I'm integrating these things into my life, and then I use the skills that I have as a marketer and copywriter to support that sort of stuff. And that's a great tip. So for anybody that's listening, if you really have this heart to go do something else, and you feel like I gotta, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, in other words, right?
Mm-hmm.
Find your suggestion there to that woman was beautiful, simple and practical. Go find some place where you can volunteer, plug into something that's already established, get some experience with it, and then, maybe that'll fill that need or help get you started in that direction.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Speaking of all or nothing mentality, I'm sure that I'm not the only person that struggles with that or has struggled with it. When you encounter somebody that's got that, how do you coach them?
I share that story first off, and then I try to de-escalate it a little bit. Just say, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Maybe you can just bring this one down a notch and bring this up a notch. And sometimes I've seen people over the years, they'll make a transition out of one as the other one gets bigger versus doing what I did in the early 2000s, walked away from a successful radio career with no plan at all, which I do not recommend because that radio career went. My first marriage ended partially because of how I did what I did. And there was a lot of communication issues also. And financially, I took a massive hit for a lot of years because I decided all or nothing. I could have stuck it out another couple of years. I punished myself for 10 years over doing what I did the way I did. And that's not a good thing either, being very self-deprecating and very self-destructive with my self-talk and language. So if you're an all or nothing person, just understand that may be waiting on the other side of the door for you. If you don't think it out well, and if you don't look for the slivers, and if you don't surround yourself with the right people and speak with them and communicate and be open and vulnerable and authentic. If you go all or nothing, you may just be setting up a pattern that's going to repeat over and over in your life, always thinking that next thing is going to be the answer, when it could actually be a whole bunch of little things all working together. And that's what my life is like now. I feel like it's a bunch of little pieces that play together really well.
Yeah, that's great. We both have the benefit of age and experience to inform our decisions now.
Yeah.
Hopefully I have people that are listening that are, in their early stages of their life, in their 20s, ahead of all the mistakes, where I completely relate to that. Well, I'm going to go do this. Let's call it an impulsive thing, or all or nothing, and then suffer years of consequences after that. And you said you beat yourself up for like a decade over that. Did I hear that right?
Oh, yeah.
And, how valuable is it to beat ourselves up, right? It doesn't help.
No.
For me, it just kept me down. And like I perpetuated it. So this idea, like, we're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. Now the saying that I've seen, and I've seen this for a long time, but it seems to be more prevalent now, which is fail faster. Like make mistakes, get up, do something different. Make mistakes, get up, do something different. Now, I don't know if it was just my generation, how I was raised. We're close to the same age. I'm older than you, but there seemed to be an awful lot of shame in making a bad decision.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. And my self-talk, my self-esteem, my self-worth tanked for about 10 years. Now, here's the part about it that actually tricked me for a long time. I was also a stand-up comedian for 7 years, and I was on the radio. I was an international award-winning comedy writer. I got paid and rewarded for being self-deprecating. And I got paid and rewarded for talking about myself downward in such a way that it made other people laugh. So I actually tricked myself to believing it was okay for 10 years. And I wasn't taking risks anymore because I was afraid of more failure, which would, of course, make me talk about myself even worse, until June of 2012, when a guy I'd actually just met at the time, I'd only known him 3 months. He put me on stage all 3 days at his event. And on the third day, I had a self-deprecating meltdown where I was getting laughs. And he staged an intervention on me that would rank right up there with those intervention TV shows. And he said, if I ever hear you talk to or about yourself like that again, A, we're no longer brothers, and B, you have no place on my stages ever. He goes, bro,
wow,
look what you're doing to yourself. He goes, do you really believe that? And I said, yeah, some days. He goes, bro, you're not going to get anywhere doing that. He goes, you're worth so much more than that. You don't even see it. And that was the day that turned the tide right there. And that's the day I started to be able to look into the mirror and just find something I actually liked or appreciated about myself. And now all these years later, I start off every day, thanks to Mel Robbins, with a huge high five and a smile in my mirror every morning. I point at myself and I go, you, my friend, are going to have a badass day. We are going to make something so cool happen. We're going to help somebody, and we're going to feel real good tonight when we go back to bed. And that's how I start every day and night, from where I was 12 years ago.
Well, that's fantastic. So you were actually having a meltdown, and the audience thought it was a performance.
Oh, yeah. I was just zinging story after story, self-deprecating, and go, oh, you think that was the stupidest thing I ever did? Let me top it. It was a recitation of just the dumbest things I'd done in my life. And like I said, I was getting laughs. So I was blind to the damage. I mean, if you look, I actually found some old journals the other day. I couldn't even count. It would take both hands how many times I referred to myself in 2004 and 2005 as Hurricane Knucklehead Category 5. And knucklehead's not the word I use. I'm keeping it clean for your show. It was nasty. And I read some of those pages of the journals, and I just threw out 15 hardbound journals the other day because I looked at them and said, I'm not that guy anymore. I've already learned everything I needed to know. I don't need these. And I just, one fell swoop, chucked that entire mindset right in the garbage, and it felt great.
That's fantastic. I know for myself that negative self-talk has been a very destructive part of my story. And even with all of the work that I've done, therapy, personal development, things like that, it comes in and it's insidious. A couple of years ago, I had a venture that I entered into and things didn't go the way that I planned. And I wound up, losing $100,000 into this thing. And slowly, a little bit at a time, I started allowing things, negative self-talk to come in my head. You're an idiot. You're so stupid. Like, what were you thinking? Look what you've done. And it really wasn't until just recently, December, when I actually started paying attention to that and going, look what you're allowing yourself to do here. Now, I could sit here and talk to you all about, what is it? What's the movie? What the bleep do we know? Is it?
Yeah.
I forget the area of study.
Quantum physics.
Quantum physics. Thank you. I could talk all about that and the evidence that I've seen and, how we talk. I could tell you about that all day long, but practicing it, and paying attention to my own life.
Yep.
Here I am not doing it.
Yep.
My point is, for anybody that's listening, it's really important to pay attention to manage our minds around what we say to ourselves.
Yep.
And your example of, being self-deprecating, I think there's a lot of folks, myself included, that made excuses for doing that because it was funny. Maybe we got laughs. Maybe there was some kind of an empathy or a sympathy payoff from communicating with others. There's even it allows one to have an excuse to stay a victim, to play small, right? I don't have to face failure because if I don't try or if I'm not good enough anyway, then I'm already a failure. So I don't have to go through that again. There's lots of different reasons. And if you're listening and you're struggling with that, I would encourage you to examine it or get some help examining it. But I know how devastating negative self-talk and limiting beliefs are to our results and just the quality of life that we have every single day, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to the secret, we talk about law of attraction and opening up and telling the universe what we want. Oh my gosh. You've got to be so careful with those words and what you say, because there's a being inside you that's writing all those things down and believing them, taking them as law. And another thing I hear people say is, oh, my life's terrible. It's this. What else could possibly go wrong? Dude, you just opened up a garage door to a warehouse of bad energy. When you do that, I mean, the trucks are going to roll in. You're basically holding the door open and inviting it in. So be very careful with the words you choose to use. Be very careful with your self-talk. And please don't think that praising yourself or believing in yourself is egotistical or arrogant. There's a line between arrogance and confidence. You got to figure out where that is for you. I couldn't figure it out for a long time because I had someone or several people in my life that if I said, I'm really happy with the way that came out, I think I did a good job, I got slammed for being arrogant and egotistical just for saying that. So it was very easy for me to play the dark side for a long time. But now I look at things and say, I'm so happy I got the opportunity to do that. And maybe it didn't go 100% right, but I learned some stuff. So the next one's going to be better. Way better than bashing ourselves.
So Steve, are there people that you've had to cut out of your life because they had a toxic impact on you and you got to the point where maybe you didn't know it before, but then you recognized it? And, they say we're the sum of the five people that we hang around the most. And, how does that impact your life and the way that you coach other people?
It has a massive impact. And that line about, the five people you hang with the most, it's money, it's energy, it's love, it's kindness, it's everything. Because you start to mirror and blur together. You all kind of morph into each other when you do that. So choose the people very carefully. And then, of course, I get people that say, well, this person's family. That's okay. I've got family I haven't spoken to in years. It's okay. It's called self-preservation. It's called boundaries. It's called honoring yourself. And there were people I ran with for years, even in the radio years. I was the only person who did not do drugs. Most of the time I was in radio. And some of those people are still out there, still living toxic lives. And I just have nothing to do with any of them because I finally decided when I'm around these people, I don't like the language they use, meaning the energy of it. I don't like their energy. I don't like the way they talk. I don't like the way they talk about other people. I don't like the way they make excuses for everything and blame everybody else in the world. And I used to fall into that being around these people. So the greatest weapon against people like that, and I get rooms full of people laughing when I say this on stage because they all got their pens waiting to write. I go, the greatest weapon in the world against these people, caller ID.
Caller ID?
Caller ID. When your phone rings, I don't want you to look at the screen. I want you to go find a mirror. Hold it up to the mirror and look at it in the screen. If your face is a smile, answer it. If you go, let it go to voicemail and then delete the voicemail. Block people from texting you. Do not be available to people whom you know are going to drag you down. And then, of course, some people say, but I'm the only one they trust. No, you're the only one foolish enough to still answer your phone. Everybody else already got the clue. You are left holding the short straw, and you're the one that subjected yourself to tolerate that energy. So grow up, grow a pair, as Larry Winget would say, and I love Larry's stuff. Honor yourself. Set your boundaries against these people. And when I was 28, I was in radio, and I was morning show producer on New Hampshire's #1 rock station. And I could go anywhere, and people knew who I was, buy me food, free drinks, whatever, and just, it was really cool.
Yeah.
And my grandfather told me, if you can make it to 40 or 50 and count your real friends on one hand, you're doing pretty well. And he was right. I'm 56. Maybe it might take two hands, but still, compared to thousands at the time that I thought were my friends, me and my 10 friends are doing pretty damn well right now. And I just spoke with one of them this morning to make him laugh, and because he was having kind of a rough week. And he's been my best friend for 39 years.
Wow. That's fantastic. I think my best friend it's just over 30. But yeah, we've been through thick and thin together, and it's quite amazing. Relationships come and go. You mentioned earlier that you tanked your first marriage, right? What did you learn from that?
A lot. And I spent the first couple of years after my divorce, I just crashed and burned my whole life. And people said, Steve, this is great. You can go out and play the field and, all that. And I said, that's not me though. It really isn't. So I spent a lot of time for a couple of years writing a lot of notes, reading a lot of books on relationships. And I told myself, and this is shortly before I understood, visualization, law of attraction and all that when The Secret came out. I said, I want to fall in love, real love, one more time in my life. And I was only 35 at the time. And I started—
Very young man.
Yeah. I started to describe the best version of me and who I wanted to be in a relationship with, the type of woman I wanted to fall in love with, the type of woman I wanted to fall in love with me. And when I started to do vision boards around 2004, 2005 for myself, before I ever even thought of coaching or teaching other people, I was just trying to put all the pieces back together. I started to put pictures of couples enjoying the type of relationship that I wanted to have, walking, holding hands on a beach, standing at the railing of a ship at sunset with a glass of champagne, looking at the sunset, laughing together in the kitchen, cooking dinner. A guy piggybacking his lady through a brook so she wouldn't get all wet, and they're laughing in the picture. Yeah. This is the relationship I wanted to have. In January of 2007, and I did date one woman in that time period, but I knew, and I was very open and honest. I said, we are just dating. And if you're okay with that, great. If not, that's okay. And so we just dated. We just, really good friends for a while. But in January of 2007, I knew I had to end that relationship because I said, this is the year I'm going to find her, whoever she may be. And in early June, I wrote in my journal, I am ready to fall in love. And 10 days later, I got an email that I almost deleted as spam because some bright squirrel moment distracted me and I almost deleted it. And the next day I realized it was from a girl I'd gone to high school with. I hadn't seen her spoken to in 21 years. And I answered the email, and she sent her phone number. And 3 days later, I called. The first words I heard from her in 21 years, it's about time you call. And I just started laughing. And over the course of 4 weeks, by phone call, text, and email, she didn't even have a social media footprint. She wouldn't send me a picture of herself. I started to remember I had a crush on her for 3 years in high school and never had the guts to ask her out. And 4 weeks later, she sent me a text. I was DJing a wedding where I wasn't even supposed to be. Another DJ got sick at the last minute. My agent sent me there. She sent me a text during dinner and, can I tell you something if you promise not to freak out? I said, sure. And she said, here's how I really felt about you back in high school, how I felt when I saw your name online, when you answered my email, when I heard your voice. I love you. And I texted back, I love you too. And we recently celebrated our 17th anniversary. We've been together ever since. And everything that was on my vision board has come true. Some of the things I'm most thankful for are the trips we've taken. And kitchen silliness is one of my favorite hashtags that I use a lot. We make dinner together at least 4 nights a week. I created it.
That's great.
And when I said I was ready, she showed up and I took action, did what I needed to do to communicate and be open and honest 100%. It's not 50-50. It's 100-100. That's how we treat it.
Yeah, I love that. I destroyed my first marriage too. We were both co-conspirators in destroying that marriage. And I learned an awful lot throughout that. I think I spent the last decade of that marriage working to be the best I could be in it, and the first 10 being crappy. But I had a similar experience with my wife. Now I found my soulmate. I really didn't understand what that term meant, but I do now. Like, we're so connected. We've not only have we healed, but we've healed each other. And there's nothing I would rather do than be with her. We've been together almost 10 years now, and it's still like my face lights up every time I see her, like we were first dating, which I never had that experience, right? My point is, oftentimes we start looking for the right one, and it's really about becoming the right one.
Yep.
And I think what you shared with your visualization board is like, not only were you setting this intention for what you wanted, but you were perhaps, my judgment, conditioning your brain to how you were going to respond in that relationship, which obviously you've been doing for 17 years. And you have these great slogans, these great phrases, kitchen silliness. You also have another one called motivational firewood.
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's my brand as a speaker. I own the trademark on that. I've spent, I've renewed it a couple of times. So it's probably cost me a couple $1,000s by now. But it all started in a conversation. Back around 2005 or 2006, I was just becoming a speaker and starting to get my feet wet. And somebody suggested I go to a National Speakers of New England Association meeting. And I drove down to Boston, and I get there, and everybody, all the members have these nice lanyards and all these fancy things. And I've got the Sharpie and the sticker that says, "Hi, my name is," and I write Steve. And a gentleman named Don was at the front desk, and he goes, "Hey, Steve, so happy to have you here with us. So what do you do?" I said, "Well, I'm becoming a speaker." He said, "Great. What makes you different? What sets you apart? What's unique about you?" I said, "I want to help people." And he said, "Steve, we all want to help people. What makes you unique? What makes you different?" And God love him. He had the patience of a saint, because I was spitting out these, off the cuff answers for like 3.5 minutes. And finally I threw up my hands and I go, "Don, look, if someone's paying to come hear me speak, it means they've got something in their life they want to improve, like a spark in their heart. But they don't know what to do. So if I share a tip, a tactic, a story, an action, or something that they can wake up the next day and do something and get closer to the goal, it's like I gave them a piece of motivational firewood." And Don snapped his fingers. He goes, "Right there." He goes, "Wow, I've never heard anything like that." He goes, "That's really unique." He said, "But you know what I like the best? Your face just lit up when you said it that way." He goes, "Young man, do you know anything about trademarks?" I said, "Nope." He goes, "Look it up. That's really unique." And I think of him often, every time, because that one conversation, like the conversation with my life coach after hitting the golf balls in a thunderstorm, conversation with my friend at a very low point who got me to follow my dream of radio. Life is a series of these little moments that could change your life forever. And I embrace them all, and I'm grateful. All these guardian angels that show up in my life in those moments. I call them 2 Dans and a Don. Those are the 3 of them.
Yeah.
And that's where motivational firewood came from.
That's fantastic. I love that. So you're telling me stories of these great people that impacted your life, but do you have a story of somebody that you've worked with that really stands out, where maybe you shared earlier about this woman that you were talking to on Zoom, I think it was. But is there another story of like somebody you've worked with where you said something to them and that light bulb went on? There was this great transformation that happened because of the conversation you had with them?
Yeah, there's a company based in Rhode Island. They're called Athena's Home Novelties, and they've got reps here and there throughout the country. Great, great company. And one of their team members, her name is Jen, came to me about 6 or 7 years ago. I've been speaking every January for, this will be 17 years coming up this year. And at the time, she was ranked somewhere in the 20s in sales for the year. And she said, "Steve, I got a big goal that I want to go on a safari in Africa because I love giraffes. I want to be there. I just want to be in their world and experience that. But I don't make enough money right now to do it." And so we had this great conversation. I said, "Who is your hero in the company?" And she said, "The number one salesperson is a woman named Chrissy. And she's been number one for years. She's phenomenal, amazingly positive, everything. She's a great hero to have." And I just told her flat out, I said, "In 3 years, you could be Chrissy." And she kind of had that little scary, like, "Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know." 2 years later, she was number 2 in the company. She tripled her business during the pandemic because normally they were in-person events. And she all of a
Right.
sudden had to switch to being virtual and completely turn her business upside down in her approach. She made it to number 2 in the company. And over the course of 2 years, because we mapped out a whole action plan, tracking system, everything, she became known as Giraffrica Jen, Giraffe Africa, hashtag Giraffrica. Everybody in the world cheered her on. She saved enough money over the 2 years, just as we planned it, for her Africa trip. And she's been number 2 in the company, I believe, for the past 3 years. She's one of my
It's fantastic.
favorite stories that I light up every time I talk about her. And I'm going to have to send her a DM later today and ask if her ears were ringing, because I was bragging on Giraffrica Jen, but she's one of my diamonds who just was in the rough, in the dirt, and she did so much work. And everything we did together, she did the work. But I sometimes shifted her a degree or 2 degrees, or, hey, have you thought about this? And she's just rocking and rolling. She's amazing.
So, you mentioned this, Jen wanting to go to Africa. Why do you think it's so important for us to know why we want something in life?
Oh, the why is everything. The why is, it's the gas in your tank. And, I say this line a lot. It's, if you know your why, if you're emotionally connected to your why, very few things in this world could actually stop you from achieving it. But how many people are out there so wishy-washy with their goals that the wind could just blow a different way and they get off path? I call it turning a pebble into a Jersey barrier that completely blocks your path. Jersey barrier will stop a car. But so many people stop at pebbles and get their way turned. It's like the people that say, oh, I'm going to get in shape this year. And then January 1st, they go to the gym and they hurt themselves. And now the gym is associated with pain. So they don't care so much about working out anymore, being healthy. And they go right back to their old habits.
Yeah.
I work out every day. I do at least 5 workouts a week. I just hit 1,900 miles this morning on our Peloton, heading towards 3,000 for the year. People ask, Steve, why do you work out so hard? Come on, you're 56. Dude, you're not going to be in shape like you're 20. I said, look, here's my why. When we're in our 70s, I want to be holding Tina's hand walking on a beach, not going to doctor visit after doctor visit because I made bad choices in my 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So every morning I get up, 5:05, Monday through Friday, turn off that alarm within 5 beeps. Thank you, Mel Robbins. Go in the bathroom, high five. Thank you, Mel Robbins. Go downstairs, put on some good music and then some podcasts. Ed Milet, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I love to listen to. I put all these good people in my head, always, and I cruise through these workouts, and I'm in better shape now. I'm down about 25 pounds from 3 years ago. And also, I've not had a drop of alcohol since May 4th of 2021 because I decided I wanted to be a better version of myself. And that's my why, is to be holding Tina's hand walking on a beach in our 70s. And if ever I don't feel like working out, all I got to think of is Tina's going to be walking that beach with some other dude if I die. So I should probably go take care of myself. Because I'm going to be
That's great
I'm going to be in
motivation.
heaven trying to get a seagull to crap on that guy. And of course,
I
putting
love
humor in it makes me want to go too. I'm like, yeah, I better get down there and work out and eat better. And gosh, I'm drinking vegetables that I wouldn't eat or that I couldn't spell the names of 3 years ago. And
Yeah.
I've just made the journey fun. We only get one shot on this earth. And every day we have a choice to make it a good day or a bad day. And I just choose to make every day as fun as possible. Even in the workouts, even in the grind, every part of it, I just bring joy to everything I do.
How does a person get to their why? If someone's really struggling with that, you said people are wishy-washy with their goals.
Yeah.
How does a person get to that why? Like, is there a process?
Keep asking yourself, or find somebody you really trust and you can be vulnerable with and real with. Maybe it has to be a professional if you got to dig through some really tough trauma. But keep asking yourself why you want something, because there's a seed of it way inside. And my why as a speaker is because that friend believed in me, my friend Danny, who died, who convinced me to get into radio. And when I became a speaker, a good friend of mine, I was part of BNI, Business Networking International here in New Hampshire, and I was one of the directors, area directors, and the lead trainer for the state. And the executive director said, Steve, why are you a speaker? I said, because I want to help people. He said, why? I said, because people need help. He goes, all you did was flip the words. He goes, why? And I hadn't consciously thought of it in years, but he asked me why 17 times in a row until I had tears coming down my face. And I said, I had a friend believe in me when I didn't. And he died right after I achieved the goal. I said, I want to be that friend for other people, even if they're strangers in an audience sitting in the shadow in the back of an event center. I said, I want to leave people better than I find them and get them to believe in themselves more than they did when we met. And he said, don't ever forget that. And I haven't. So it took 17 whys until I struck raw emotion nerve. And now when people ask, why do you want to be a speaker? I tell them that story. I've never forgotten it. And I feel it every day. And I don't have to be on stage for that. I walk into a grocery store and I go, whose day am I going to make right now? And make people laugh or pay a compliment or help somebody or cheer somebody on or just tell somebody, hey, I love your hat. I could never pull that off, but you look awesome. I'll see them 2 aisles later. They see me and they shake their head and they smile. And I think, I don't know where their day was, but I just got them to believe that's a darn nice hat.
Right.
That's what I'm all about.
That's great. If you're listening right now and you don't realize the gold that Steve just gave you there, the value of asking yourself that question and continuing to go deeper until something visceral happens for you. And usually it's tears. That is how you find the why. So I know a process that's kind of based on Six Sigma where you ask yourself, it's 7 levels deep. And so we don't have time to go into that. But what Steve just said, what you just said, brother, is so gold. You know, when you're stuck with what is that why, ask yourself again and again. Whatever the answer is, ask yourself that. I want to help people. Why do you want to help people? And whatever comes out, keep asking why. And when you get to that emotion, that's it. It'll land. So that's great. We're running out of time here, and I got so many things I want to ask you. The whole concept of the show is, how to be a hero in your life and your business, right? So I want to ask you, who do you want to be a hero to now in your life?
Every day I want to be a hero to myself, meaning that when I go to bed at night, that doesn't mean, glorious, grandiose, my own theme song or anything like that. When I go to bed at night, I just want to know that I left as many situations as I could better than I found them that day. When I had an opportunity to commit a kindness or leave a positive ripple in the world, that I did. And that's all my life is a series of moments like that. I don't want my name on a building. That won't make me a hero. I want to have a positive impact. And it goes back to one of my grandfathers who never said the words, but he lived them. He just helped people. And if you had a storm in your neighborhood and he drove past your house and saw that a branch fell off a tree and broke a picket on your fence, he was a lifelong carpenter and cabinet maker. He would go home, get his tape measure, his little stubby pencil on his ear, go to Tony's house, measure the picket, go home, make one. If he had the same color paint in his workshop that your fence was, he would paint it for you. Go put it on your fence, and you would never know that Al Dion had been there. That's what I want to be every day. He was a hero to me. Still is, because he inspires me to do stuff. You'll see heroes all day long. I see heroes holding a door for an elderly person or helping reach something off a high shelf at the grocery store. Those are heroes to me.
Yeah.
Heroes to me aren't the influencers we see on social media. They're not celebrities. They're not athletes. They're not heroes. People who have an impact in a positive way in the world with no expectation of any return whatsoever or any glory to it. Those are my heroes. Because we sneak around and we add positive energy. We don't have to have a camera on us all the time doing that. Those are my favorite heroes in the world. The ones who silently just be who they are and make a positive difference in the world every day.
I love that. And, Steve, I think what people take for granted is this idea of a hero is something, use the word grandiose. And literally, the person that you say, that's a great hat, you have no idea what's going on in their life. They may be on their last shred of hope, like just dying for some kind of encouragement, some kind of positive word. And that thing that you say, that little thing that to you took almost no effort, right? You just noticed something and you said it, could have changed their life. So being a hero doesn't mean lifting a car off of, a child in an accident, although that certainly qualifies. It could just be being kind, showing up and being real, putting somebody else's situation or needs ahead of our own. And I think that's the thing that's important. The thing I want to really convey in every episode of this show is that every single one of us has this hero within us, right? Mm-hmm. Being the best that we can be for ourselves, regardless of what happened yesterday. You said it yourself, your life is a series of moments. So if a moment ago you did something shitty, pardon the language, it's a new moment. Like you can do something different now. And it's these little moments that make up the wonderful life that we create, right?
Yeah.
And so everyone has the capacity to do something heroic, and allow your definition to be, open to, it doesn't have to be grandiose. I love that.
Yeah.
So thinking about, being a hero, like, what is the greatest gift you can give to your future self? What would you say is the greatest gift people can give to their future self?
Yeah, something I've been doing now for over 13 years is putting pen to paper every day in what I call a gratitude journal. And I write down my favorite 3 moments of the day. Now, I don't just write the same stuff every day. Like, I've asked people before, like, what are you grateful for? They go, oh, my house, my wife, my job. And I'll see them a few weeks later and go, what are you grateful for? They go, I told you, my house, my wife, my job. I'm like, look at the energy change. Like, you're not even excited to say that anymore. So what I do is I write down my favorite 3 moments. I do it in the morning because it's a great way to start my day from the previous day. And I only give myself 1 line each. So I have to write them as emotionally connected and cool and fun and memorable as possible in less than a line each. And tomorrow morning, by the way, I'm going to write down that we had this conversation. So just know you're going to be in my gratitude journal tomorrow.
Love that.
What it's done for me is, now just paint a picture. The last 6 years, I refer to as 3 deaths in a pandemic. Lost my dad, lost, other than me, the most important person to my business, and our little dog. And I had a pandemic that wiped out both of my businesses, which are event-based. And every day, even the morning after my dad died, I had my 3 gratitudes, things I was grateful for in that moment. So I look back and I see these things and I say, you know what? Maybe the times weren't great, but something good happened that day. And in the middle of a podcast one time, a host said, no, Steve, there can't possibly be something good every day. And I opened it up and I started laughing because there was the line, got Nellie home, avoided the cop. And that was from, at the time, 7 years prior. Nellie was the name of my dad's old plow truck, which was uninspected, uninsured, unregisterable. And we had to drive it to the mechanic in the dark of night to avoid the cops and drive it back the next day and get it home. And I was driving Nellie and my dad was behind me, so no cop could get behind me and see the plate. And I get to the first rotary and there's a cop ready to come in the next side. So I hold my arm out the window and go ahead, sir. He goes, hey, thanks, buddy. And we get home and I am roaring because I asked Dad, did you see the cop? He goes, no, where? I go, right in front of me. I said, but I let him go. So I wrote in that 1 line the next morning, got Nellie home, avoided the cop. And in the middle of a podcast, as I read it and told that story, the host was cracking up. And I said, that's the greatest gift you can give to your future self, is to document something really cool or interesting or fun that happened today.
That is great. And you know what? As I listen to this, I know the power of gratitude list. I suggest this to people an awful lot. I use it myself. I go through, when I'm having a terrible day or a terrible moment, I might go through the ABCs and come up with something I'm grateful for every letter.
Wow.
But the challenge that you just gave there, not writing the same thing every single day, that's a lot harder than it might sound on the surface. So I would encourage everyone, I'm going to try that to see, how many days I can go writing some 3 different things every night. Because it's easy to just say, my wife, my house, my health, right? And like, I got it done. Check that box. But really digging in, because there's a lot more to be grateful for than I know that I'm aware of on a regular basis, right? A lot more.
Yeah.
I find that when I go through the alphabet thing. But so, Steve, we're coming to the top of our hour. Thank you so much for your time. I want to know, like, who is the ideal person to work with you, and how should somebody get a hold of you? Where can they find out about what you do? How can they connect with you?
Thank you. Right now, my biggest focus and the people I tend to be working with the most are entrepreneurs who are really frustrated. You keep hearing hustle and grind and hustle and grind and hustle and grind. People in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who are suddenly realizing I'm missing my kids' sporting events. My wife and I haven't gone on a date in forever. I have no purpose. I don't feel in balance in my life, and I'm feeling disconnected. And what am I doing all this for? When you hear people talking like that, or if you're right there nodding your head right now, listening to that, I'd love to just have a conversation, not a sales call, a conversation, to see how I might be able to add some value for you. And the easiest place to find me is on social media. I'm on all the majors under my name, Steve Gamlin, Gamlin. or you can find all the things I do at stevegamlin.com.
Excellent. Brother, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. This has been an amazing conversation. You dropped so much gold. I really appreciate you showing up and being here for this. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you would have liked me to?
Oh my gosh, this has been, and I say this in the ultimate compliment, an effortless conversation. We're like two friends sitting on a front porch here. So we've been playing volleyball this whole time. We're going to spike it. And here's the cool part. We both win. So I've got nothing else. You led us everywhere we needed to go today. And I hope that we provided some stuff that can really help some people out.
100%. I hope so too. Steve, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And I can't wait to talk to you again.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning into Hero Up. I hope today's episode challenged you to step up as a hero in your field and provided you with valuable insights to express your unique voice and message. If you found this episode helpful and motivating, please leave a review and share it with your friends and family. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes and amazing guests. Until next time, find your voice, share your message, live your mission.